there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. This is 10 eyeshadow palettes that were discontinued but that are still really, really good. Welcome to everyone watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today is another video in eyeshadow palette month. Very, very welcome to me chatting just about nothing but eyeshadow/eyeshadow palettes all month, every single day. Because I have a lot to share with you, and one of the videos I wanted to film was a video with some eyeshadow palettes that are still in my collection or lying around my house somewhere that were discontinued, but that I still think are some of the best eyeshadow palettes that have come to market ever since I started trying eyeshadow palettes. So let's just get to it. Before we get into the video, it may be good to know who I am and what I like doing on this channel. My name is Maaike, I live in the Netherlands, I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, and this greatly influences how I feel about makeup. I have been reviewing makeup for more than a decade. I love trying out eyeshadow palettes, Essence and Catrice, and getting the use out of my makeup. So if that's something you're interested in, then I hope you'd like to consider subscribing. Yes, 10 eyeshadow palettes that I think are still really, really good, but that are no longer around. So maybe you still have lying these about. I know that not everybody likes watching videos with eyeshadow palettes that are no longer around, which I think is silly because at the same time there are so many people critiquing like content creators for only ever showing new things and never going back to old favorites. So if you want people to go back to old favorites, you also need to watch videos like this where eyeshadows are shared that may no longer be available, but then you can look in your collection to see, do I have something similar? Is there something on the market that's similar today? Etc, etc. You don't always need the new thing, for one, and for two, we need to go back and use the things we already have, and that's why I wanted to share this video with you today. So yes, I have 10 palettes here that are some of my tried and true, some of my favorites that you can no longer buy. I hope you enjoy. I think we're gonna just start off with the most controversial one because ABH's subculture, everybody hated on. I'm like the only person on the planet I feel sometimes who enjoys this palette. The subculture is my perfect grungy fall color story. And it doesn't have a lot of shimmers, and the formula in here is a bit drier, a little bit more powdery, you could say, which is something that a lot of people didn't like when this was released. But I just find if you use a different brush and you use a light hand, you're perfectly fine. I can make this work just fine. And the way I make this work is in combination with multi-chromes. If you still have this, or if you have a color story like this with these grungy, colorful, deeper jewel tone kind of shades, multi-chromes. Let me tell you, multi-chromes and duochromes pair so incredibly well with these shades, because for instance, if you were to put like this yellow in the crease and then maybe that green with it, and you get a multi-chrome that has a green to blue to yellow shift, it's gonna bring the whole look together. With this, I feel I always frame my eye in a way that's just gonna set up the look for using a multi-chrome with it. That's why this palette still gets to stay. It's something I do every single year. I'm not too fussed about using this palette in any other way by now. I tend to not even use this first half of the palette. Like, these shades hardly ever get used. I just use these darker, more saturated things over on the end. That's what I use most often, and they work so well for me. And so many brands have duped this. I think the dupes are still around. This one has since been discontinued, which I think is very sad. However, shades like this, because of the popularity of this palette and the infamy of this palette, I think is definitely a reason for this kind of color story still being around, and you definitely don't need to have this one, but you can very easily find shades like this. So if you have shades like this in your collection and you've never tried them with multi-chromes, try them with the multi-chrome. Trust me on this one. Another really sad one, this was limited edition from Catrice, and I have mentioned this so many times. So do I need another reason to, do I need another excuse to rave about this? No, but I could rave about this still every single day. This was limited edition fall 2022. It came back in 2023, so secretly a part of me is like, Catrice, bring this back for fall 2024. I don't think they will. Maybe, we'll see. Catrice has a tendency to not release everything in one go in all territories where they are available. So that's definitely why I think we got it back again last year. But the falling colors, I mean, it was 15 euros, but it's Huda Beauty quality at a fraction of the price point. That's how I feel about this. The gold throws it off into making you think it's a lot more warm tone than it actually is. The only warm tones really is this little row here, and the orange and that like bronzy brown are like the only two shades I don't really love. Everything else in here is stunning. We get a lot of rosy tones. We get some taupey things. This darkest shade is a deep dark purple. It is absolutely stunning. It works every time. It's got amazing shimmer quality. I wish so badly that Catrice would bring it back. I mean, even the packaging for Catrice, this is really, really gorgeous. It has that velvety texture like the subculture, and then that gold foiling makes it look so luxe. And part of me is like, why did I not buy a backup of this? But here's the thing. I try to be a good girl when it comes to backups, because if I think of all the products that I would want to have a backup of, it would get out of hand. I would need an extra house just for storing my makeup. That's why I do regular declutters, and I still have this. I have the swatches, I have the review, I have the images of looks I've done with this. So even if this ever breaks or I lose it or whatever, I know I cannot repurchase it. I would very much like to if I ever lost it or whatever, but it's gonna probably go into a makeup memory box once it expires and I can no longer use it. A brand that only does limited edition eyeshadow palettes is Glamshop, and one of their palettes is on my eyes today, in case you're wondering what this pinky purple look that I've got going on in my face today is. But Glamshop does make one of my favorite formulas. They're a Polish indie brand, and they are incredibly pigmented. They are a little bit more affordable. To me, it's very sort of ColourPop-esque for a lot of the things that they do, especially when they're releasing these 9 pans. They don't seem to do them that often anymore. So I don't know what's going on there. But this brand kind of runs its palette game in the way that it's like while stocks last, you can buy things. And the Coco Sanka was one of the first things I tried from the brand. And let me tell you, I like this better than I do my That's Taupe at this point. That's Taupe by ColourPop is very similar to this, but That's Taupe doesn't have a duochrome like that. This is a little bit more glam. It's a little bit more interesting, I find. It's not as neutral, I feel, as the ColourPop, but this has so many amazing, like this shimmer here, amazing. This matte is really nice. This is a bit more warm toned, but it goes really well with this like bronze taupey gold. It's a very interesting shade because it looks brown in the pan, but then when the light hits it, it has this golden green sort of flip. Well, it's not a flip. It's like this sheen that runs through it. It's very, very interesting, really pretty. I really enjoy this formula, and it's just a really, really good one, and I wish they wouldn't do things as a limited edition, and that they would keep things that are this nice around for a longer period of time. So with Glamshop, if you see something on the website you like, grab it while you can, because they very quickly discontinue things. Another palette that I wish they would have brought back, Love in London from BH Cosmetics. So BH Cosmetics started redoing their entire travel series right before they went bankrupt. So they had re-released a lot of the palettes with that new packaging. But they never get around to doing this one. And this is one of my favorite BH Cosmetics palettes. It's cool tone, but it's got some warmth. It's got a really, really good taupe shimmer right here. I like the purple with the blues that are in here. It just has so much going for it, and it has so much going on that is just incredibly pretty. The shimmers in here by now I feel are perhaps a little outdated. So I would have loved seeing them redo this, but this is again in my Shop My Stash like in July, because I was like, I need to try this again. So if you want to see a recent look I did with this, then go back to my July palettes revisited video, because I did go back to it because I just like it that much. If you're familiar with my content, then you know that the inside of this palette is no longer the original color story, so I'll pop up a image on the screen of what this palette used to look like when it came in the original packaging. However, I think this is about 50% Naked 2 and 50% Naked 3. And I still think, I don't understand why the Naked 3 is still available everywhere and why the Naked 2 has been discontinued. First of all, the packaging is a lot better. I like this metal tin better than I do the Naked 3 palette packaging. So when I decided to join up the two to create my ultimate cool tone palette, I decided to put it in the Naked 2 packaging because I just like it better. I still have a backup of this. Yes, Naked 2 and Naked 3 are backups somewhere in my house. So I still have pristine, never been used, never been touched original color stories for both of the palettes that are inside here. But today in this video, we're just mentioning the Naked 2 as it is. And I think that if they were to re-release it today, so many people would love it. Cool tones are really having a moment. Was this super cool tone though? I don't think so, because it definitely had some like yellow things in there as well. Those I never use. Like, I've shown this palette in videos so many times where I like covered up the bottom half of the palette, like the first 3 shades I never used because those were the yellow tones. Oh well. And you're probably curious, if I can open it, to see what mine looks like now. So remember, this is a combination of the Naked 2 and the Naked 3. I did a video to show you how I reorganized it, and you can see these eyeshadows are well loved. Like, look at the dip in this one. I think that's YDK or Liar. I don't remember. Like, I think this is Verve. Like the taupe, oh no, Suspect. This is Suspect from Naked 2, and this is Liar from Naked 3, I believe. Or no, YDK. YDK. It's YDK from the Naked 2. Now I remember. That's another one of my favorites. So, yeah, I just turned this into my favorite cool toned eyeshadow palette. Haven't hit pan on it quite yet, but you can see the dips and dents and the way this is just very used makeup. I still like this. Are these shades super old? Should I still be putting these onto my eyelids? It's getting to the point where it's getting dangerous, I think. So this may, in the next declutter, have to go with my other Urban Decay palettes, because I still have all of them. They just don't live in my collection anymore, because I wasn't reaching for them. I was just liking other things, but I used to collect Urban Decay eyeshadow. So this has to go in there as well. And I still have, like I said, the Naked 2 and the Naked 3 pristine in a box somewhere in my room, because they were always 2 of my favorite palettes. And I always said that if they became too old or if they were discontinued, I would repurchase them. And I definitely did. And I didn't mind doing this reorganization because I had the 2 original palettes still. So yeah, my Naked 2 with the rearrangement is still really lovely till this day. But I wish they had kept this palette around or they brought it back. Another brand where I'm even thinking, like, are they still doing well? Are they okay? KVD Beauty, at the time still called Kat Von D Beauty. I have one of their really old butterfly palettes. This is the Monarch palette. And this is very much of its time, I feel, color story wise. But this was some really, really good eyeshadow. I didn't use mine all that much in the end. I bought it for like the orange, but then I decided that orange wasn't my color, even though I'm wearing like a rusty red, orangey kind of, like that shape matches my jumpsuit that I'm wearing. So this isn't always my best color, I feel. But then I discovered the rose gold in here. Loved that for a minute. I like these neutral tones. I didn't love these 3 really big lighter things at the top. But this was such good eyeshadow. And I don't know what happened to that brand, because I don't really think they still do much eyeshadow at all. And I don't know what happened to these palettes, because they had like this cool tone one with these blues and purples in. That one I was eyeing up, and then of course they did the matte one, the Shade and Light Eye. Used to own that as well. Didn't use it enough. I'm not a matte eyeshadow palette lover, so decluttered that easily. But as a reminder, and also because it's gorgeous packaging, which is something I couldn't chuck, this is one I did declutter, but I put it in a makeup memory box, because I feel that this is like a point in time in makeup history, and I couldn't get rid of it for that reason. But yeah, these Kat Von D eyeshadow palettes, so wonderful. Still a really good formula, I think, till this day. And then we have this one. They actually brought this back several times, but they're always different color stories than the original. So the new version of the Solomona from Odin's Eye is nothing like this. which is why I haven't bought that. But this was my first Odin's Eye palette, and I still really, really like mine. Oh, I need to hold it this way because you can read the letters that way. I always hold it the wrong way, it seems. But the Solomona original color story is so, so good. I think what happened here is that the pigments are no longer made, so that's why it was discontinued. But I wish Odin's Eye would do a color story like this. Yes, it has a repetition of two very similar yellow shades. That's the only thing that I don't love. But I love these warm tones in combination with the lilac in here. This shade is stunning. This shade is stunning. I have a standard look that I do with this every single time I reach for it. It's so beautiful. I wish they would still do this. Is this, again, a color story that's very much of its time? Yes, this is very... I feel this is very 2018 in a palette, but I don't mind it. I'd still use this from time to time. It's great for the springtime, and I go back to it every year. Then some larger palettes as well. This is my Huda Beauty Desert Dusk. Huda Beauty eyeshadow is some of my favorite, especially in this larger format. I think the quality is better in the larger palettes than it is in the small ones. I think there is a different manufacturer there as well. I think these are made in Italy and the small ones are made in China, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is just still till this day, I think one of the best warm tone palettes in my collection. I've mentioned it many times before. A lot of people were going for the purples. The purples aren't the selling point for me. It's the fact that we get these like really spicy warm tones combined with the purples that make this palette for me. And if I don't want to go very warm toned, I still have enough like neutral light things to go for something super neutral and everyday. I love the shade Cashmere here in the corner. That's one of my favorite shades in the entire palette. This was discontinued and I don't understand why. I understand why, because it probably wasn't selling very well anymore and it wasn't like unique anymore compared to all the other warm tones we had. But I have decluttered so many of my warm tone palettes but kept this one around because it's that good. So bring it back. I think people will love it again. Speaking of bringing things back, we have Miss Natasha Denona. This is the gold palette. Again, in mine there is one shade that's different because ironically enough, the yellow tone gold in the middle was my least favorite shade in the palette. And I also used to own the lila, so I took one of the more interesting shades from the lila and put it in here. Of course, we now have the golden palette in the midi size, which is cheaper than this ever was, but it's essentially the same color story. I think 9 shades of this palette are in the golden palette. So if you missed out on this and you love yourself a golden undertoned palette, then maybe get that. I don't know. So this is the one that I've changed around. I will pop the original color story up on the screen right now so you can compare notes. But everything else here is still the same. The thing that makes this palette for me that the golden palette doesn't have, but maybe if you were to buy the Yucca, you might get close, but these four. And I love Kava, but I think Kava is in the new palette. That's one of my favorite shimmers. This is just a really good palette still till this day. So I'm glad that they brought it back, but the thing that made the palette a standout palette for me, which is those tealy greens combined with the golds, that's what I love about the palette. That's the thing you're not getting in the golden, so you're getting all the boring bits. So to me, that would not be worth it. However, if you already own the Yucca and you then buy the golden, but then that's more expensive than this ever was by itself. So I don't feel like we should have to buy 2 things to replace one thing. I think out of the 2, my choice would still be for the Yucca because it has those greens in. Yet again, it doesn't have the interesting duochromes that this has. So I still feel this is quite unique. I think there is a 5-pan that has some of these shades in as well, so you could opt for that. You definitely don't need this or the midi palette, I think. But yeah, this is lovely. I still really enjoy my Natasha Denona Gold. It's one of my favorites in my collection. And another favorite in my collection that I keep selecting for eyeshadow palettes I want to use again video because it's that good. It's the Club Nebula from Kaleidos. This is their collab with Angelica Nugvist. This was limited edition a couple years ago. I got it upon first release and I haven't regretted it since. It is one of the most colorful palettes that is colorful without it being overwhelming, I find. Because a lot of colorful color stories can look, you can just look at it like the palette I'm wearing today. It's so colorful in the pan that it just gives me a headache and I don't know what to do. And then I end up doing a look and I'm like, oh, that's actually really pretty. But this one does the thinking for you. And I really like that. You could just use each row. You've got your blues and your greens, you've got your purples, you've got your peachy pinks. It spells it out. But the best part is that you could also use all of these rows together and do a little bit of contrasting and it will work. So this is one of the best collab palettes that was ever made, I feel. The color story is very Angelica, especially when she made it. This was like all the colors she was wearing regularly, I feel. So this was not only a good collab, it was also just a good palette, a good color story that's still unique till this day, I feel. And I definitely passed up on other Kaleidos palettes because I already owned this. Something like the Flower Punk, didn't need it because I already had those chartreusey kind of shades in here. So if I combine those with my Electro Turquoise, I essentially already had the Flower Punk palette. And that's why I never bought that one, for instance. So yeah, this palette was a really good one. So sad that not more people could get their hands on this because this was incredibly good. But yeah, I think, like I mentioned at the start of the video, we need to mention these old palettes. We need to be reminded of them and go back to them and use them again, because if you love your eyeshadow, it's gonna expire someday. We cannot keep around everything. Am I the kind of person who wants to like use up every pan of eyeshadow I've ever used? No, but I do use up eyeshadow from time to time. It's mainly the eyeshadow I use to set my eyeshadow base with, but I do use an eyeshadow like every year. Every single year I use up an entire eyeshadow. So I know I can do this when I set my mind to it, but I also review things for the channel, of course. But yeah, these are just some of my old favorites that are still so incredibly good, which is why I still have them. So I really hope you watched. So I really hope you enjoyed watching today's video. Thumbs it up if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more about me. I'm currently doing daily videos in the month of August for eyeshadow/eyeshadow palette month, so you can stay tuned and see what else I have on offer. I will be doing all of the videos I already do regularly, but some of them are also going to be eyeshadow palette related, and then I have lots of other content coming your way. So I really hope you enjoy watching this month, and then I hope to see you in my next one. Take care. Bye bye.